Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, The High Cost of Chucking a Sickie and Unplanned Absenteeism. This is the 10th and final webinar in our very first lunchtime lightbulb series, and we're so pleased to have you join us. Welcome to those of you who are newcomers, and of course welcome back to those of you who have joined us before, or in fact for the whole entire first series. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Sarah Sibel, and I'm joined, as usual, by Michael Mear, Cal Director and Lecturer. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Sarah. Hello, everybody.
Now, before we get started, just a few housekeeping items here to run through very quickly. This webinar will run for about 30 or 40 minutes, depending on your questions at the end. And I will open up the second half to questions. So if you do have anything you would like to ask Michael, or you think of anything during his presentation, do just type it into your questions or chat box on the bottom of your dashboard there, and I will read them out and have Michael answer them for everybody to hear. This webinar will also be available for you to keep and watch again and again. I will make sure the presentation slides are emailed out to you along with the link to our very own Cal YouTube channel, where you can watch this video and the previous 9 in this first series. So let's get started. A 2011 survey by the Direct Health Services DHS found that Australia provided 4 headline statistics. The average employee takes 9.4 days or 4% of working time as unplanned leave. On average, this unplanned absence costs $3,619 per employee per annum, or $385 per day. This works out to a national cost of between $26 and $30 billion per annum on unplanned leave or sickies. 40.5% of organisations report that these absences are underreported in their organisations, and 80.8% of absences are for 2 days or less. So they fit the unplanned sickies perfectly. In support of this last figure of 80.8%, taken those unplanned sickies, of the unplanned sickies, the final CCH Unscheduled Absence Survey of 2007 found that personal illness accounted for just a third, 34% of unscheduled absences, while 2/3 were due to other reasons, including family issues, personal needs, entitlement mentality, and stress. Now, other key findings from the DHS survey included 31% of responding organisations believed that non-genuine absence was increasing. Sickies are prevalent across organisations, with 88% believing non-genuine absence is occurring throughout their business. The absence rates for the public sector, 4.9% or 10.8 days, was 22% higher compared to the private sector with just 4%. Manufacturing and production have 8.5 days. Manual workers take 1.35 fewer days off per annum compared to non-manual workers. Absences levels were highest in the ACT with 13 days, Queensland with 11 and WA with 10. Over 70% of respondents considered absences of 2 days or less to be their main challenge. Only 57% of respondents reported that their organisation had a documented strategy for managing employee absence, so just over half of all employers surveyed had any sort of strategy in place to try to address this issue, while 72% of organisations believe that their managers require development to manage absenteeism. However, having said that, only 38% of organisations have provided training for managers on how to manage these unplanned absences. 79% of respondents believe that unplanned absences are a significant cost to their business, yet only 47% of organisations actually monitor the cost of absence. Nearly 73% of companies use trigger points to manage absence. And finally, an interesting statistic on longer-term absences of 15 days or more. Absences for mental health, surgery and workers' compensation account for 45% of all longer-term absence. Golly.
Golly, they're all dying of us, Sarah.
Now,
If I have a sickie? We go to lunch.
You can't call in sick until at least after this, Michael. Now, compared with other nations, Australians took 30% more sick leave than employees in the United Kingdom. That's hard to believe. Don't we get hired over there because we're such hard workers?
The rest of them haven't gone because they were too ill to catch the plane.
Right. Although national average absence levels fell to just under 9 days per worker over the past 2 years. Dun and Bradstreet say that workplace absenteeism costs $28 billion annually. An article in Business Day from February 2012 titled "Sick and Tired of Absenteeism" said Toyota's chief executive in Australia admitted there are occasions, especially the day after a public holiday, when a third of his employees will chuck a sickie. The article went on, high rates of absenteeism are a signal there's something very wrong with the way employees are engaged. An analysis by research firm Gallup, for example, revealed that disengaged employees have rates of absenteeism that are 27% higher than their peers. We touched on this last week, Michael.
You did?
The article also said that every sick day costs businesses an average of $385, and 1 in 40 people do it daily in Australia. Daily. Well, now that we've taken in all of that, let's run a quick poll about absenteeism or quickies in your organisation. So you'll see on your screen in just a second the question, what percentage of your workforce do you think take unplanned sickies, with the answers 0 to 5, 10 to 50, or over 50%? At the moment, we've got most people voting for between 10 and 50. Whew. Some with 0, that's good. Okay, so 100% have voted, Michael, and you've got 25% say between 0 and 5, and then you've got another 75% of people say between 10 and 50%. Nobody said over 50%. That's good, isn't it?
Well, it's good, but it's showing that we've got pretty much an average profile.
Excellent. So, Michael, the statistics are quite staggering. I remember back when Australia won the America's Cup, and the Prime Minister, Bob Hawke, said something to the effect that anyone who doesn't let their employee
Is a bum.
have a day off is a bum. Now, Michael, it's often replayed. That's how I remember it, because I was a mere newborn.
You were very newborn when that was. Claiming that you remember that, Sarah, is a bit of a long bow.
Well, I was a very smart newborn, that's all. But it does serve to provide us with an example of the way we treat sickies in Australia. We treat them pretty much like holidays. They're there to be taken after a hard night out or a big weekend or when the surf's up. And I often hear people either bragging about it or, I mentioned earlier about that, the mentality of, it's mine to take. I have them owed to me. So I know a lot of people who do that quite regularly. But when you see the costs of sickies, or as we said, the unplanned absence of over $3,000 per employee per annum, or almost $400 a day, when you think about that across Australia on any given day, 1 in 40 employers are taking a sickie. It's quite astounding, and I can see why it's such an issue for organisations. So, Michael, what's on the agenda for today?
Well, Sarah, we've got some great content, but let's say we tackle it this way. I think we need to set a bit of context here, and there are, in my view, 3 types of sickness at work. There's actually being sick. There's being sick of work, which is a motivational issue, and the third one is being sick of working for you, being disengaged in the workplace.
I hope you weren't looking at me then when you said that, Michael.
At the time. It's all fun here, as they can hear giggles in our laughter. But if we look at the DHS figures, which said that 80% of absences were 2 days or less, well, that's the classic sickie that indicates being sick of work and or being sick of working for their organisation. So maybe we should work through today in those 3 contexts, and we'll start with management apathy, how it's dealing with it, genuine sickness-based absenteeism and how to create healthy workplaces, being sick of work, and that's the motivational side of it there, and look at the causes of it and we'll come up with some cures. Being sick of working for you, that's the disengagement issues, and again causes and cures. And Sarah will then do the questions.
Okay.
Sarah, let's start today now with looking at management apathy. Really very interesting here. Again, the figures are suggesting 79% of respondents believe that unplanned absences was a significant cost to their business, yet 53% not monitoring, 43% no documented strategy, 72% believe their managers needed to manage it, but only 38% provided training to assist them. I'm not really sure what all this means, but it looks very much like a management issue to me that, frankly, management isn't entirely addressing. Maybe it's just too hard, leave it as it is. Maybe it's an unavoidable cost of doing business, or maybe it's an invisible, unquantified cost that just isn't picked up in the chart of accounts, so is never acted upon or actioned in any management forum.
Michael, before you go on, what do you mean by that, the invisible, unquantified cost that isn't being picked up in the chart of accounts?
Right. Well, Sarah, let's just say if you had 4% of your labour budget set aside in your accounts and that all your absences were costed against that figure, firstly, you'd be starting to get big data figure on how to start to manage it. You could start to see where the instances of absenteeism were occurring by department and manager. You'd have an incentive pool for staff and managers. Anything less than 4% could be distributed as attendance bonuses. You'd have a pool of fund for training. Now, let's bring this down to reality, and I'll put up a hypothetical for you. Say you're a small business that employs 30 staff with an annual gross salary based on average weekly earnings of $1,450 a week. Now that's based on an ABS figure distorted by mining, but that's the figure, and a fairly average on-cost figure of 23%. So grossed up, that's $1,787 per person per week. Now that's per annum, grossed up, that's costing you close to $93,000 per annum. So if we multiply that by 30 staff, that gives you an annual gross wages bill of close to $2.8 million. 4% of that would be $111,000 or $3,718 per person for 30 employees. Now that's very, very close to the average figure that DHS gave us before in their survey work. Now, if we could just reduce sickies down by 35%, that's a saving of $39,000 or $1,300 per person, and still have 6.11 days of days available per person. Now that's a pretty nice incentive, is it not? Now, and it's money that you could use to incentivise your workforce not to take sickies. So even if you had half this money as an attendance bonus, where you incentivise your employees who reduce sickies or don't take sickies, then indeed you've got a great win-win. Employees get a little bit extra in their annual paycheck as a bonus, while the organisation saves money. Look, of course there are a lot of options that managers can use to motivate or incentivise employees not to take sickies. This is just one of them. Now, even if you have an incentive for not taking sickies, absences of course are still going to occur, but at a reduced rate. Because of the continuity of labour, overall production should increase, increasing productivity figures and again making it an all-round win-win. In short, management shouldn't remain apathetic. This attitude's costing business significant money in lost days and reduced productivities. There are real things that management can do, and as we've seen, it's rewarding all round. Now, Australian workers say that they could be 21% more productive at work every day if just they could change one or two things at work. Now, that represents $305 billion of productivity per annum, or a bit over $26,000 per person. In the Ernst Australian Productivity Pulse study released earlier this year, it found that 4 in 5 Australian workers, that's 85%, could be more productive in their role. Workers said the main obstacles to productivity related to staff engagement, well-being, motivation, reward and recognition in the workplace. So maybe the answers to reducing sickies and their costs are in these things of engaging, well-being, motivation, reward and recognition. The challenge for employers is to take a strategic and measurable approach to how they manage their human capital.
Michael, you make your business cases so eloquently when you use the numbers. When you calculate the cost of these absences, as you've just done, it makes it hard to see why all organisations aren't proactively addressing this issue. It seems like a no-brainer to me.
Well, Sarah, once again, you're absolutely right. The numbers don't lie, and they really tell a very powerful story. And practitioners have to argue in numbers. If you want to be taken seriously, you have to present a business case, argue this in numbers. This is a seriously important role for all HR professionals. As we know, the statistics I quoted earlier, from only just over half of the organisations surveyed had any strategy in place to even attempt to deal with unplanned sickies and the significant losses that incurs. Now that's often, as we said before, because the hidden cost, no one's ever pointed it out. I'm sure if the CEO or the executive group saw their sickies costed out, as we've just done here today, they'd be jumping to do something about it. Now, that's one good example of just how valuable the HR professional can be to an organisation.
Excellent. Michael, can you now tell us about genuine sickness-based absenteeism and creating healthy workplaces?
Sure, as we've said, absenteeism comes in two forms. The unplanned, as we've seen, where people just pull a sickie and decide not to turn up, or really legitimate, where it's planned or agreed in advance that people will be away. Now, believe it or not, some people actually miss work because they're sick.
I know, Michael, I'm one of those people.
I've not seen you take a sickie.
That's the right answer, Michael.
Oh, right, okay. Now, look, Medibank says the cost of sickness, actually sickness-based absenteeism, in Australia is around $7 billion each year. Now, let's get started on sickness-based absenteeism. Well, reality, rather than try to solve the problem of worldwide ill health, this might be just a bit too big for the two of us in the 20 minutes or so we've got. Perhaps we could look at solutions, or at least what managers can do to promote wellness in their organisation. The table on your screen was taken from the Medibank paper, shows the drivers and what's offered through workplace wellness programs. You can see the list of range of actions and offerings that an organisation can do to assist employees improve their wellness. And you can see across the top how each of these actions ties in to an employer's duty to maintain a healthy and safe workplace, human capital, and of course, employee engagement. So many of these actions or offerings impact directly on work health and safety, but they also have an additional side effect of further engaging their employees, motivating and of course retaining them. The Medibank report says, now, and this is true, look, preventing chronic disease requires behaviour change, such as reducing tobacco intake, eating a healthier diet and exercising regularly. There really aren't quick fixes, but people must choose to change their behaviour. Ultimately, individuals have responsibility for ensuring that they do not increase their risk factors of chronic disease, but they can be supported to make these changes if they're given the right environment and incentives and tools. Now, employers can do just that. For employers, often innovation is the key to keeping their staff interested in helping to influence a change in behaviour and attitudes to wellness and program participation. Key strategies adopted by employers, including designing programs that are user-specific, culturally appropriate, delivered through appropriate methods to maximise participation, as well as seeking freedom or feedback from individuals through climate surveys and suggestion boxes.
Michael, I can see from this list that we were looking at previously that many of the actions are easy to implement, although they all cost money. We had a previous student who worked for an organisation who made huge changes in their organisation with salad bars and free health checks and like walking groups and things like that. And he said it made a huge impact.
It's Sarah, that's a terrific case study. And it made a terrific difference, not just in health, but also in the culture of the organisation. And they had a lot of, in that workplace, they had a lot of long-term employees who weren't particularly healthy. And it's the classic case of behaviour breeding behaviour. When these people saw that the organisation was really caring about them, they re-loyalised, if I could say it, because behaviour breeding behaviour, they became more liable. And you know that this is a really good one. Do you know the people who gave the greatest feedback to the organisation about how good the program was?
Who was that?
I'm so glad you asked. It was the participants' partners, their spouses.
Oh, yeah.
They really appreciated that the company was taking care of their partners and husbands' wives.
Well, you spend nearly 100% of your time at work, don't you, Michael?
Oh, well, you do. I'm a mere 85%.
Now, what else could you tell us, what else could we do to improve or encourage employee health so that, you know, we reduce the need to take genuine sick days?
Look, one of the simplest yet very effective ways to enable employees to better manage their personal health and well-being is, look, provide flexible work arrangements that meet yours and your staff's need. We often talk about flexible work arrangements in a variety of contexts, and in fact it's now compulsory under the Fair Work legislation. But by providing this flexibilities, your employers may reduce their stress levels, especially if they have young families or perhaps ageing parents who require caring or monitoring. And we all know just what stress can have the adverse impacts on health. Look, other actions that you can do. Get employees involved in developing their own strategies to address these unplanned absences. Give meaning to work by redesigning, eliminating or reducing boring and repetitive jobs. Introduce an employee assistance program. Consider employee health wellbeing programs. Provide training and development opportunities. Ensure people do actually take their holidays and get some recreation. Make sure you've got a workplace attendance and leave policy. Ensure that there are processes in the workplace to track and address absenteeism. Investigate and respond to any underpinning causes or trends. To provide supervisory and management training in absence management. Adopt workplace practices that promote attendance. Look, deal directly, don't avoid it. Deal directly with unplanned absenteeism and build supervisor-employee relationships.
Lots of ideas to try here, Michael, and I wish we did have more time to discuss some of them in more depth, because I'm sure there's many more to these points than you might initially think. But we do have to keep moving because we've still got a bit to cover off. So let's look at our next topic, and maybe you could explain what you mean by when you say employees could be sick of work.
Sarah, you're right, of course. We've just brushed over some of these actions, and it's quite a bit more for each of them, but we'll address a few of the key or more topical ones in further tutorials, and you can also check out the college online short courses to learn more. But if we now look at being sick of work, now Ernst and I referred to their Pulse studies before, provides a great insight into Australian workplace. The Pulse continues to find a very close correlation between individual productivity and workplace well-being ratings. The Pulse data shows that more than 1 in 3 Australian workers experience suboptimal being wellness at work, and this is costing Australian employers $12 billion a year. People spend 32%, that's other than you, Sarah, normal people spend 32% of their time at work. So if you look at this diagram, you can see that just where people are spending this time. You'll also see that the first pie chart is showing that at an average of 8.33 days an hour at work, 14% or 1 hour of that adds no value. No value. Then you look at the pie chart on the right, you can see how time is wasted during typical workday. Now have a look at these great time wasters. How many of those are systemic or management-based issues? Sick of the style of work. Why would you want to go to work just to have your time wasted? Many of the underlying causes of dodgy excuses are really within management's control. People don't like micromanagement, meaningless, repetitive work, dysfunctional workplaces, a workplace culture that treats unjustified absences as okay, no line of sight vision to demonstrate task significance, of lack of acknowledgement and thanks, just being taken for granted, being messed about by experts, no decisions, changing instructions, shifting goalposts, lack of consistently applied standards, where the talk isn't walk, and managers who can't actually manage. Would you really want to get out of bed on a cold June morning if all you had to do was to look forward to your working days without finding those characteristics being acted out over and over again?
No, I can definitely see your point there, Michael, but what can organisations do?
Well, of course, in the big picture, this is a webinar topic all of its own, so there's just so much organisations can, and HR managers can do, but for now, here are a few. First off, you need to ensure that all the person's skills are used to provide a culture that motivates a person to do their job to the best of their ability. That ensure that managers and supervisors support each person in the performance of their job. Ensure that each person knows that their work is valued. Ensure that each person is playing to their strengths by aligning their job to their skills. To give the person a reason to be proud to work for you. To make sure that each person is absolutely clear about their roles and their responsibilities. To ensure that the people know where their organisation is going, that they've got career paths. To ensure that workplace relationships are functional. Ensure that jobs have meaning, and providing workplace flexibility. Now, here's a bit of payoff. According to Ernst Young, workers who felt their roles were flexible, felt productivity was all important across the organisation, actively tried to increase their own productivity, were more satisfied, more likely to be giving it their lifetime best, felt that they could easily in working with their manager's job, were less likely to be planning to leave their organisation within the next 12 months. As an aside, it's really quite interesting to see in the next slide the way that managers or people saw that managers could also improve productivity and business enjoyment. Now that is going to be available, Sarah, to people, and I'd really suggest having a look at that. This first one up there, simplifying and standardising processes. Avoiding waste by not having jobs properly designed and processes designed properly. So getting the processes and systems right, setting people up to succeed.
Wow, it's interesting to find that workers who felt their roles were flexible were more in tune with productivity. It seems like the flexibility is in itself making employees more aware of their work and overall performance and how it relates to productivity. I know flexible work is important, but I didn't realise, I guess, the correlation with it. Michael, I can see that we could really spend a lot more time on this topic. But we are running out of time. We seem to have barely touched the surface here, but I guess we do need to keep moving on and have a look at this next topic, which is quite intriguing, and that's not being sick of work, but being sick of working for you. What do you mean by this, Michael?
Well, Sarah, there's an old adage. Yes, people aren't sick, they're just sick of working for you. And sad, it's perfectly true. It doesn't really require genius to work out that the major causes of unplanned absences, they just don't like you or somebody else at work. Of course, they're the same results, but look, that attitude is results of something else. Behaviour breeds behaviour. If you don't care for your staff, it's a bit rich to expect them to care for you. So what causes demotivation at work? Well, dysfunctional relationships are probably the biggest single cause of sickies. Remember, 65% of performance management issues are caused by dysfunctional relationships within the work group, particularly with the supervisor. It's not about the ability to do the job. There are other things that can destroy engagement: lack of respect, favouritism, broken promises and broken expectations, lack of integrity, poor and inadequate feedback, overburdening and under-resourcing, no shared direction or constantly changing direction, rutism, being stuck in a rut with no career paths, growth opportunities. So these are just a few of the causes, many causes of disengagement, and I think we can cover these more fully in a later webinar.
Yes, Michael, I can see that these are all topics in themselves, but are there things that you can do to improve engagement?
Yes. First off, effective communications. Secondly, making people feel valued. Thirdly, assigning the right jobs to the right people. Ensuring that each person has the opportunity for personal and emotional connection to the business. Making sure that each person has the opportunity for growth and development. Now, a lot of these points can be managed quite effectively through an effective performance management system where there's a constant stream of two-way communication and feedback which actually addresses these points listed on the screen. Again, you can find out more about these points and how to improve them by checking out our new people and productivity programs that contains a suite of online courses designed to assist you in employee engagement and increase productivity. But now look, there are two things that I'd really like to work through and for people to know the answers to. And these are questions that you have to know. Again, why would somebody want to work for me? Have I set them up to succeed? These two crucial questions I urge you to look at after the seminar and think about. Just jot down some of your answers to these questions. Knowing the answers, then walking the talk, can go a very long way in reducing sickies and driving out the cause of absenteeism.
Thank you. Once again, Michael, you have delivered the goods and given us something to consider and think about. But we do have to keep pressing on, and we have some very interesting questions that have come through. So we'll start now with the first question here. A member of my team often takes a sickie after a heavy weekend, especially when his footy team is playing in a Sunday game. I know he's not sick, and I've even seen the pictures he's posted on Facebook when he's at the footy the night before. Can I confront him about this?
The answer to that's yes, and you should. And simply by not doing it and not addressing it, you're becoming complicit and in the absenteeism. Now, as a manager, that's totally unacceptable.
Okay. Do you think this trend to take sickies when perfectly well is a generational thing? It seems to happen a lot more often with the younger people in my workplace. I think yes.
Sarah, no, I don't think it's age specific. I think it's mindset specific. The notion of entitlement. I'm entitled to all of these, so I'll take them, irrespective of whether I'm sick or not.
Okay. A member of my team takes sickies at the worst possible times. For example, if we have a big tender due or a large shipment due, yet she really seems to like her job and gets on well with her team and with me. I've tried everything with her and even offered to be flexible if she's got something on that she needs time off for, yet nothing seems to work. She just can't seem to see the consequences of her actions and then bounces in the next day as if nothing's wrong. What can I do?
Well, I suppose it's the cracked record syndrome. You simply have to go through again and again and again and again the consequences to both herself, to the organisation, and to other members in the team of this constant shifting of extra work to people. Hardly fair. Again, that's my recommendation, Sarah.
Okay, I've got a couple more before we close off. One of my team has used up all their sick leave allocation for this year. So what options do I have if they ring in to take another day? Can I terminate them?
No.
As much as you might want to.
No, as much as you might want to. You'd really want to find out what it's about, whether these are genuine sickies, are they caring, for sick children or something like that, and make arrangements. People can make arrangements for leave of absence without pay. I'd be doing those, particularly if the employee is a valued member. I'd be going down to the root cause and from there planning a plan of action with them.
Okay, and one last quick question here before we finish off. I've written into my company policies that an employee must provide a doctor's certificate if they take a sickie immediately before or after a weekend or public holiday. And I have found this has helped me to manage those long weekend sickies that we mentioned earlier, Michael. Is this legal?
It's certainly prudent, and I would be doing it, yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for today, Michael, and thanks everybody for joining us. Like I mentioned and Michael mentioned quickly before, we do have a number of short courses on a wide range of management, HR, sales and PM topics that you can find on our website. These courses can also be offered in-house in your workplace with as little as 5 or as a group as big as you need. I do hope you've enjoyed our last Lunchtime Lightbulb Series webinar and this first series of 10. We've really enjoyed spending our Friday lunchtimes with you. We will be taking a few weeks off before we start our next series, so do stay tuned and make sure you do send us your suggestions if you'd like us to broach any topic in our next series. We'd love to hear from you. Our contact details, as you can see, are on the screen in front of you now. You can visit our website, email us, call us on the phone, like us on Facebook. There's usually something interesting happening there. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, you can watch this video and all the previous videos on our YouTube channel. We do hope you can join us for our next series. But until then, we'll have a good weekend and a nice winter.
I'll say au revoir until we meet again in the next series. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody.
Much more eloquently put than me, Michael. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.